much, viewers, for staying with us here on ZBC TV. And of course, this is Economics 101 that makes sure that it keeps in tracking with a Vision 2030 and aligning with making sure that we track all things to do with the National Development Strategy 1, as well as making sure Zimbabwe achieves an upper middle income economy by 2030. Now, my name is Kurtley Gwindi, and in studio, interestingly enough, we have invited Mr. Justin Machibaya, who's a property development and real estate expert, to explain how the sector can contribute to the National Development Strategy 1 in line with keeping with an upper middle income economy. Mr. Justin Machibaya, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And it is indeed a pleasure to be having you, tracking all things to do with property development that invests billions of dollars into the ground. How does this transform to the economic development of the nation?
No, thank you, Kurtley. I think one of the most important things to realize is that real estate remains the foundation of any economy. It's an asset that God created once, and He will not recreate it again. So to the extent that any nation and people respects and honors its real estate is to the extent that real estate makes a contribution to national development. And indeed, worldwide, real estate contributes very, very significantly to national development.
A very huge and massive contribution that real estate plays. And let's talk about its role to economic growth, which is often overlooked in developing economies, and thus its potential is often missed. Several projects with the potential of adding value to the economy in the developing world have suffered a stillbirth, and some of them failed to make a way out of the boardroom. Tell us yourself, sir, as an established property developer in the country, how have you managed to make it despite these challenges that we were mentioning earlier?
No, thank you. My personal philosophy and the philosophy of my organization is land, every piece of land is holy. So our approach when we deal with land is we are just not dealing with an ordinary resource. Like I said earlier on, it's created once and not to be reproduced. So, in evaluation as a principle, there is a position called highest and best use. Mm-hmm. So our approach has always been, when you get a piece of land, what could be the highest and best use in terms of the potential development that could be done? And how do we release more land within the existing kind of land? We did submit to our parent ministry, Ministry of Housing,
yes,
which is headed by Honorable Daniel Garwe, that to the extent that we are able to rezone certain locations, neighborhoods, to increase densification, we are literally creating more households, land.
Yes.
Hence our drive on gated communities in cluster housing, development of apartments. We've got projects that are now going up 6 floors, 8 floors. Yes. 2 acres taking up about 80, 70 units.
Yes.
And that definitely makes a very significant contribution. Now, Kurtley, the most important part to understand is real estate is a piece of land that sits on the ground. But above it, the moment you start developing it, you are now affecting building material suppliers. Your house stays, your union, your bathroom boutique, name them. Your electrical suppliers, your plumbing suppliers.
Your boreholes.
Your boreholes, you are now affecting labor supply. Your tradesmen, your carpenters, electricians, plumbers, builders, architects, all professions that are literally connected to the built environment.
Yes.
They get busy. You then get on to the end product. You affect the furniture supply. You affect the finishes supply. You affect the landscaping and everything. So it keeps the economy going.
Yes.
Now we are just talking, for example, residential. What about commercial? When you do the shopping centers, the likes of Highlands Park, you can actually see the effect. You look at Semlev, you look at Westgate, you can actually see the effect.
and how best can we maximize as real estate individually and obviously create perhaps a huge backbone with regards to employment in the nation.
No, thank you, Ketley. I think when we talk of employment now, I think we have to look at it in two approaches.
Yes.
We have got the formal employment,
Yeah.
and then we have got the informal employment.
Yes.
Now, the last that I heard about beginning of this year, I think February, at a conference that I attended at Rainbow Towers, advice was that we were 76% informal.
Yes. So that's the teams that come through as a result of perhaps a specific location, that building is happening, and then you perhaps flight out adverts for laborers who can just come and do the job there.
Correct. And you'll find now that most of, on average, I would say probably up to maybe projects up to $1 million, they can easily be executed by informal tradesmen. Otherwise, a builder with his team, a carpenter comes up with his team, an electrician comes up with his team, and the like, as opposed to a structure where a project goes to tender and a single contractor is appointed. So you then find that while the informal sector is built up very strongly, because they don't carry a lot of overheads, and in terms of taxation, their contribution to the fiscus is limited because when they get paid, it goes directly to them.
Oh, yes.
It then overcrowds the formal construction companies and providers within the built-up environment. The question is it playing a significant role? 100% in as far as creating employment
jobs,
and putting money on the table. In as far as the structural foundation in terms of formal organizations, we may need to look at that and say, okay, how do we ensure that we keep our formal organizations supported? Because we need that. I don't think we can sustain ourselves fully with 100% almost informal sector, where the limited formal sector is then burdened with carrying the larger bulk of the fiscus obligation in as far as ZIMRA payments are concerned.
Oh, yes.
So I would like to say there's definitely, it's an area that really needs to be looked at. But in as far as its contribution to employment, 100%.
Okay.
A lot of families are living. The challenge that we have, though, Ketley, now is our training programs for tradesmen, carpenters, builders, electricians, through the polytechs and the like, has been very limited in many years. We are actually running short critically of those tradesmen.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be talking all things to do with the educational aspects. Of course, interrogating a little bit about tenders, as you have heard from Mr. Justin Machibaya, who is speaking to us all things property development. We are going to carry the conversation forward in the second segment of Economics 101. This is a wrap on the first segment. Stay tuned. Thank you, viewers, for staying with us. This is indeed your premium show that puts a face to with regards to everything to do with economic development here on ZBC TV. Now, this is an exclusive. My name is Curtly Gwindi, and of course, we are talking and carrying the conversation forward with Mr. Justin Machibaya, who is a property development and a real estate expert, who's explaining to us all things to do with this sector. Now, Mr. Justin, just before we left for before the break, we were talking all things to do with the education that comes around real estate. We do know there are many players, the tradesmen that you've mentioned. Of course, architects are involved, and we do know that there are those behind the scenes who are also responsible for the disbursement of these properties. These are the property managers themselves. How important is education with regards to this art, this skill, this trade, and how best can one also say they want to start and perhaps also finish within the sector?
Thank you, Kathleen. And as far as education is concerned, it's critical because real estate by its nature is capital intensive. And by its nature, it requires to be excellently executed and presented well. Short of that, you are literally killing and eating your balance sheet as a nation, even as a people, and as a company, even as an individual. If you build a house well, very well, and the location, let's maybe take an example, Borodobrook Estate or Kingsley Estate. You spend 400,000 building it. The money is spent whether you produce a quality product or not. If you produce a quality product in the kind of two locations that I've highlighted, your property is likely to be 800, 900, $1 million USD. If you
almost double the
correct.
Yes.
If you produce it poorly and the quality is bad and the workmanship is poor and the choice of materials not properly thought and the feel is not properly thought, otherwise interior architects not quite involved, you might find out that that asset may actually struggle to recover the land value and the capital injected in the construction. So real estate from a national point of view, and that's why I think we've got the bylaws from City of Harare as to how you build and inspections that needs to be done, and consulting engineers to make sure that things are properly done, and the use of proper architects in designing. It's very material. And I would really emphasize that to the nation, that whenever you consider undertaking a building project, it doesn't matter big or small. If you try and save initially at the design stage, you are actually eating your balance sheet before you have even started. Do not spend at a design point. Appoint the correct architects that have the correct flair for what you want to do. Appoint professionals that are necessary. Get the necessary key counsel. Build your whatever you are building, because you're building your balance sheet. It's most likely for the majority of people that real estate, it remains their biggest asset in their portfolio. So it's the same with companies, nations, like we have said. Anything that contributes more than 5% as a single sector to GDP must be respected. Here we are talking of an average of 13 to 18%, in some countries going 30. We must be serious about how we do our real estate. So training, we must do it properly and seriously, and making sure that our assessments are proper. And I think there's no better time for the nation of Zimbabwe to really get back to training brigades now. As a company, we're actually considering that. How can we work with the prisons services? How can we work with youths and universities? And allow me to say this, Kathleen. If the nation would probably care to listen to this a little bit, I think right now what the nation requires are practically qualified people.
Oh, yes.
As opposed to academically qualified people.
Yes. So these are your polytechnics, these are
Correct.
the platforms that
Correct.
have the psychomotor skills.
Yes, because when you go for those kind of training, it's training on the job. It's different from attaining degrees. My personal opinion, we have more degrees than we are able to work. We need practical qualifications. So to the graduated persons, young and old, I think you will help yourself a lot if you would put your hands to the plow and work on getting a practical qualification. Go for painting, go for plumbing, go for building, go for electrical, go for tiling. Things that you can walk into any organization and say, I'm offering my service and I can do it. And if you do it exceptionally, you won't even have to look for the job. They will come after you. So training, equipping, key.
Okay, and that's a very, very wealthy contribution there, and I'm like I think many of our viewers are listening, that it's very imperative for young people to also consider that, even when they're leaving their high schools, as well as trying to get onto the job there. And yes, let's talk about an expected upsurge in demand for industrial and commercial properties as populations continue to grow and policies are shifting towards promoting the local industry. Do you think as a nation we are capable, with regards to even our land space and, like you've just cited, our skill sets, are we capable of meeting this demand with regards to local industry as well as a commercial and industrial industry?
Thank you, Ketley. I solidly believe we are capable. I think the key responsibility of any government is to create an enabling environment. If the environment is created, business will always come up with the means. Okay. We have, I think in the last 6-7 years, delivered over 1,400 units in the environment that others feel very difficult.
Yes, it was seemingly impossible for some.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah. But because we have a different outlook and we can see the potential, we can see the direction, we can see the gaps in the market, things that needs to be filled, we continue to thrive together with all other developers that have been doing great, magnificent things. So my comment really would be, there is nothing that shall withstand the continuous assault of sustained thinking. So ours is, as a people, as a nation, as the business community particularly, is to think, but the government must create an enabling environment.
Okay. And most definitely, message out there from Mr. Justin Machibaya, whose conversation will continue, of course, and all things to do with property development. If you are someone who has a keen interest within this industry, you don't want to go away, as we'll be checking out some more with regards to this topic here on Economics 101 for the third and final segment. Stay tuned. Thank you so much, viewers. This is indeed Economics 101. We are carrying the conversation here, all things property, with Mr. Justin Machibaya. Thank you so much for staying with us, sir.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Let's interrogate a little bit more to do with cost, because we did appreciate earlier on in our conversation that it's a very capital intensive industry that you are in. And let's talk about the cost of acquiring a stand, for example, or land in the country. And you know, with regards to here on Economics 101, we always talk about the discrepancies to do with, you know, the US dollar versus the RTGS, which is our local currency. Is the nature of the sector, or is it the nature of the sector for it to always lean more towards foreign currency, or something can be done to make sure that people can afford, you know, perhaps just, you know, acquiring a stand or land in the country?
Thanks, Kathleen. Yeah, real estate is a hard asset, and any hard asset benches itself against firm currencies. So I think by its nature, because it's a long-term investment, it's a balance sheet asset, the reaction of the market is you want an asset that you can predict its trends, behaviors, and position. Hence, it's being benchmarked by the market in USD. There is nothing that I believe anyone can do, because that's a market sentiment, and trying to go against that market sentiment is actually affecting the performance and behavior of that sector and that real estate in our balance sheet.
How best in your industry, within your sector, within your businesses, are you making provisions for such individuals who perhaps also want to acquire land over a piece of time, over a certain period agreed obviously by both parties, and perhaps also become a homeowner, become a property owner, or become someone who of course has an asset like you've mentioned?
The government of Zimbabwe has done very well, is to teach its people to invest and to own. And every Zimbabweans, wherever you find them, they always seek to own. And it's a very important point that you raise about civil servants in the lower part of the market, because very often, from a property development point of view, they are not catered for. And allow me to explain very briefly why. Is the same capital that is required for development. And because the development tends to be is a business, the business analysis would always direct the capital where there is the highest and best return. If it's residential, it's then the top end, the apartments and the like, which unfortunately are quite pricey for many. As ourselves, because we have the philosophy that our role as a business is to house families. And it doesn't matter whether it's residential, commercial, industrial, offices and the like. So we have within our program a balance between low-end development projects where we do land servicing and infrastructure development to middle and top. We have submitted to our ministry, local Ministry of Housing and the Ministry of Local Government, the need for private-public partnerships.
Yes.
Where the government, the parent ministries provide land and partner with
the private sector.
The private sector. And agree on a minimal return to help people.
Yes. With regards to the 2024 national budget, please, can you just tell us what you think has been aligned aside for this industry with regards to the 2024 budget?
Thank you, Ketley. The Minister of Finance introduced a 1% on real estate assets from 100,000 going up. The industry, the market right now, industry as well as market in general, because there's no clarity as to how that's going to be done.
The taxing process.
The taxing process and the like. There's almost a pandemonium in the industry. Capital is very shy. And the real estate developments by their nature, they tend to be long-term. And I'll give you as an example. We have a land development projects upmarket that we've just completed, gated community, 236 residential stands and commercial. We have just completed servicing and we've spent over $6 million on it. Now, with that kind of an approach, if we do not sell those stands by next year,
you'll run a deficit.
We are going to be paying $536,000 per annum.
Quite frankly, yes.
If we do that for 3 years, we are run into bankruptcy.
Yes.
Now, what does that do to capital inflow and investment? If one had projects lined up right now, that capital is likely to go to another destination, another country. Can we afford that? Absolutely no. And I can say it very firmly, absolutely no. If there's anything that we need is to come up with policies and express the policies in a manner that is very clean and clear, necessary consultations having been done so that there's a proper buy-in. We need capital to come in. And lastly, I'm not sure whether we can really say someone who has an asset of 100,000, their wealth to be taxed. What if they've inherited it?
And on a lighter note, let's talk about CSR, Mr. Machibaya. We can't go without acknowledging the fact that your industry itself has a lot to do with also building the environment, but very much intensive with regards to also bringing down some of the facets of our environment. Right now, Zimbabwe is looking at, statistics and figures to do with drought coming through, and that's the El Nino effect that is also going to touch a little bit of what we're experiencing now, which is this sweltering heat. How best have you managed to salvage and bring a little bit of corporate social responsibility within your sector, and also just contribute to, sometimes it's, destruction of trees that happens and breaking down of certain key aspects of the environment. How best have you given back?
No, thank you. In each of our projects, we have a policy that any tree that is to be cut, even if it's obvious that that's where the building is going to sit, it has to be signed off. And we must count the number of trees that we cut and replace them 1.5.
You plant them.
We plant them 1.5, not just the same.
Yes.
Because some of the trees on developments that we undertake, we were actually looking at one in Highlands recently, and we believed and estimated to be over 100 years. We need to preserve it. Part of our further contribution is to really go green, provide solar infrastructure for residents to use. That then reduces consumption to the ZESA grid. Indirectly, we are actually giving back to the nation.
Thank you.
But we do it very quietly.
Oh, most definitely. And as we wind up, we've seen an upsurge. Zimbabwe has been shy of having high-rise buildings. Is it something that's practical by the year 2025, where we say we want a world-class city status? We do know we do not have many of those. I've personally had the privilege of traveling to places like Dubai, where all land is probably occupant of high-rise buildings, and we haven't seen much of that in Zimbabwe. How practical is this by 2025?
Remember I spoke about the highest and best use of land? Yeah, God created it once, and Dubai is a classical example. They have limited land. So whatever land that they have, they'll multiply it by going up. Just the same with all other major cities and towns in the world. We can achieve that. I think by 2025, it could be very early.
It could be very early.
Yes, we are going to start seeing the signs. But there are fundamental ingredients that must go ahead, which is basically your infrastructure development. Our sewage water system, for example, in Harare, has not been upgraded ever since.
Yes.
Right? Our water system, again. Our power supply, again. You cannot use the same 160 millimeter sewer pipe that was meant for 1,000 units to same carry 10,000 units.
Oh, yes.
You get where I'm coming from? The same thing with water and water pressure. The same thing with power supply. So we have to have that go ahead first.
From the foundation point.
From the foundation point. If there's anything that we really, I would urge us as a nation to put our eyes on, is to upgrade infrastructure development in existing and to build new infrastructure. Wherever new projects are going, they must be properly done.
Oh, yes.
Properly inspected to world standards.
Absolutely, and a meticulous conversation, a meticulous contribution, and of course, a very enriching conversation to do with property as well as real estate development. I'm pretty sure if you're watching us from home, you've learned a thing or two, and obviously a take-home with regards to this industry as a whole. We have just been joined by Mr. Justin Machibaya, property development expert as well as a real estate mogul. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Kat.
And yes, this has indeed put a wrap to Economics 101, this particular edition that has, of course, tracked all things to do with NDS1 and property with regards to its contribution to Zimbabwe as a nation. Now, my name is Kurtley Gwindi. Until next time, please keep viewing ZBC TV here with your premium show, Economics 101. And from me, Kurtley Gwindi, the crew behind the scenes, it is pleasant viewing and God bless Zimbabwe.